Okay, so I've got my arm ready, and hopefully my fingers will be a lot better, so let's get this thing to it. Okay, so another jump cut right there, because as it turns out, in order able to do this properly, in order able to actually win this final race, that is the fact that, well, basically, rather than just mashing the X button the whole way through as fast as you can, instead, you have to keep your pace going between, Candy Murray and, well, basically, it's the fact that you have to be able to slightly tap the X button multiple times. Well, not fast enough though, until at the end, because you see that the more you mash the X button and the more you're able to actually go further away from Candy Murray, basically the rubber banding decides they're able to caught up with you, and as a result though, you lose instantly. So because as a result though, most people seem to have a lot of frustration with this particular race, so as a result though, that's probably best for me to be able to actually keep up the steady pace, even though it might be a bit slow compared to the forms of how it does it on several speedrunners out there, but basically though, it's the fact that you're gonna have to be able to keep mashing the X button and, yeah, and hope for the best, and then just try to able to not overspeed, or even in this case, don't overtook her, because obviously the rubber banding decides to able to caught up and then you lose instantly, as far as I've already said this earlier, so, like, I almost gotta get myself a bit, screwed up right there, but then I'll have to be able to go slowly and steady, because obviously slowly and steady wins the race and all that stuff, but, yeah, you have to do a lot of button mashing in this particular race, because as far as I'm aware, not only is one of the hardest races in the game, but it's pretty damn long too, especially that you go all the way around throughout the whole entire world. And as a result though, that your fingers will get a bit of a painful process quickly. Especially noticeable that it's kind of like in the forms of several other Mario Party minigames, like take Mecha Marathon for example in Mario Party 2, that basically though is the fact that you have to mash A and B simultaneously, and also same applies to Cheap Cheap Chase in Mario Party 3, and especially noticeable with the forms of domination in Mario Party 4, and several other button mashing minigames throughout the Mario Party game's history, because as a result, yeah, this might actually be a bit of a painful process on this race. So, anyway, so when you think that you've almost reached at the very end, as you can see, that right now, that Candy Murray never actually overtook this speed at this point, until specifically towards the very end, and it's all about timing as well, because obviously, that if you did it a bit early, then you will still lose the race, but if you do it in the exact point, specifically about, let's just say, well, mainly over there, and then basically just mash the hell out of the forms of the X button, and sure enough, you'll win the race for sure. So, because if you hear that specific, the drum kind of jingle or something, then you win the race. So, yeah, it is a bit painful though, especially noticeable that I felt so sorry for you, most people out there, that are actually having a bit of a trouble for that particular, the next Cheeto page, and as far as I'm aware, that's the reward you can get, and I've already mentioned about this, is the fact that, well, in the first time around on this particular world, then you get a Jiggy, but the second time, you have to get the actual Cheeto page, just like the forms of how it does it on the second world. However though, I feel like the second world is actually a bit easier, just because it's not that long, and all that stuff, but this is painful. Because suffice to say is the fact that I'm just gonna have to able to actually poop out the grenade egg right at the forms of this mechanical mouse, because let me tell you, that race really blows my mind. But anyways, enough about that. Now let's go ahead and move on into the forms of the next thing, and that is the fact that we can head back into Humpa Wumpa's tent, and because of that though, we can now able to actually get, I would say the next Jinjo. So because of that though, I believe the next Jinjo is somewhere over there. So hopefully we'll try to get her from there. And since this is the last pink Jinjo that we've actually, well actually technically purple actually, as was said on the text. So that means that we actually obtain every single like purple Jinjos. And that way, we got ourselves our next Jiggy. So because of that though, yeah, we're actually getting pretty dang close towards the end in terms of fighting every single Jinjos throughout the whole entire game. So, But hopefully though, that once we're done with those, then we pretty much guarantee we can able to move on to the fun parts, and that is of course backtracking through previous worlds and then just trying to able to actually complete the majority of some other missions throughout. So yeah, that seems like a cool idea if we're able to actually just to do all that before we get into the finale portion of Banjo-Tooie. So yeah, that might be seems the case. So anyways, a few things I want to explain for this point today, and that is the fact that today's day is of course the 11th of October today, in this case in 2021. And guess what folks, it's my birthday today, and I am now 24 years old. So yeah, I'm very glad that I'm actually able to actually jump up a bit for, you know, just trying to able to actually get into the forms of the actual birthday routine again, after the forms of how lackluster last year was for me, just because of the forms of, well, you know what I mean. So as a result though, that I actually got some even more gifts, starting with of course the forms of, well, let's just say the biggest present I've actually got, or the best present I ever got, is the forms of Metroid Dread for the Nintendo Switch. And overall, I had a lot of fun playing on it, even though it does take a while to get used to at first, but hopefully once I'm able to actually get into the forms of the rest of the Metroid series again, then sure enough, I will definitely get able to recommend, you know, Metroid Dread, because obviously that's, well, it's about time to able to actually now finally play a new 2D Metroid game nonetheless. And this time you can play on the go, very much like the forms of how it does it on the 3DS Metroid 2 remake, on the course of the Metroid Samus Returns. And, also Metroid Fusion and Metroid Zero Mission, a remake of the first Metroid game back on the NES days. And overall, you should probably still recommend the forms of Metroid Dread and all that stuff. And because I've already mentioned about that ever since during the course of the first half of the forms of this world. So yeah, you're probably able to definitely recommend checking it out. So, and the second present I've got is the forms of Fast and Furious 9 on... Really? I really hate when that happens right there, especially that I always seem to able to actually got one health left thanks to the forms of that pretty fast, you know, the actual honeycomb item that it's all about timing based and everything, but most of the time though, I'm just gonna commit suicide right there. But that's okay, because we instantly go back in there, so that's okay, so that way we can able to get our full health again, so that should be alright. So anyways, as I said this before, I've actually got myself Fast and Furious 9 on DVD. Despite how most critics seem able to think that Fast and Furious 9 might be the black sheep of all the actual, like, a really good, solid Fast and Furious films. Like, for instance, the fifth one is actually pretty damn good, and the sixth one is way top notch, and even the seventh one is easily the best, and the eighth one is okay, but the ninth one, I think, to me, is kind of mediocre. But the only reason why I managed to get the ninth film is because I just want to add it to my collection or something. Although, mind you, about the fact that, well, usually potentially speaking, it's just the fact that, well, I just have no words to think about it. After the forms of the actual final release of the actual film just turned out to be, well, kind of alright, but not the best either. I mean, surely it's like, well, I found the film alright, but it's just not the actual best installment either. I mean, usually that seems the case, so... Anyway, and the next present I've got is another amiibo, and this time around it's Princess Daisy, based off from Super Smash Bros. Lineup, because I've obviously already got the Super Mario lineup for Daisy ever since in 2016, thanks to the forms of the announcement release of Mario Party Superstar, did I say Superstars? Star Rush for the 3DS. I keep thinking about that. Speaking of that game, Mario Party Superstars, is the fact that we've already got about 18 days to go now, so because of that though, I'm still hyped about it, and you know, I just can't wait until whenever we get into that game before we, you know what I'm saying. So anyway, and yeah, I'm very glad able to actually have both versions of Daisy from the likes of those amiibo lineup, which is of course the Super Mario lineup and as well as the forms of the Super Smash Bros. Lineup. So because of that though, yeah, I'm very pleased about able to have those. And I think that's pretty much about it. And another present I've got is the forms of, first of all, I actually just managed to get myself the, another copy of Spyro 3, in this case, Spyro The Year of the Dragon, on the PlayStation 1. Now, I know you guys are probably thinking that, have you already got that? Well, turns out though is the fact that my conditioning on my previous copy of Spyro Year of the Dragon, which as far as I'm aware for the actual condition of the game, unfortunately though it's not the best either. I mean usually I always seem to able to have myself some tons of stickers on the actual game case, which does manage to ruin the condition for a bit, and also the disc, it's not perfect, but at least it kind of works, but at the same time though, that I just have no words to able to think about the fact that that the actual marking of the actual disc does attempt to bother me a little bit. So because of that though, yeah, I just have no words to say about that. But at least I'm glad I've got ourselves a very dang good condition for Spyro Year of the Dragon game on the PlayStation 1, thankfully. So because of that, yeah, I'm very glad they're able to actually got the rest of the trilogy again. So, but this time with a much more perfect condition than the forms of how it does it on, well, my first ever purchase of the physical version of Spyro Year of the Dragon game on the PlayStation. So, speaking of the PlayStation, another game I actually got for my birthday, and that's the forms of Rayman 2, The Great Escape, the PlayStation 1 version. And because of that though, now, as far as I'm concerned, now I basically got 4 versions of Rayman 2, The Great Escape. One for the Dreamcast, one on the 3DS so I can play on the go, and also the 3DS version is actually based off from the Dreamcast version, aside from, well, pretty much a miserable frame rate. But at least the visuals do look pretty cool though, certainly a lot better than the DS version, that's for sure. Especially noticeable that the controls on the 3DS version is actually a little bit better than the DS's very stiff D-pad and everything, because I know for the fact that the DS doesn't have the forms of the analog stick, but as far as I'm concerned, much like in Super Mario 64 DS or something, basically the controls in Rayman 2 on the DS feels a bit far cry from the original release, especially noticeable with the superior version on the Dreamcast, and I also got on a PlayStation 2 called Rayman Revolution, and now I've actually managed to get myself the PlayStation 1 version. Well, aside from the fact that it might actually look a bit worse than the other versions of the game, but what I must say though is the fact that the reward at the very end of that version is really cool. Especially, oh gosh, there's the fake Ginger right there. So, thankfully we did manage to deal with that, so... Anyway, once you complete the forms of, if you collect certain amount of lungs on Rayman 2 The Great Escape on the PlayStation 1, the actual cool rewards you can get if you finish the main game, you get yourselves the forms of the ability to play the prototype of Rayman 2 prototype as in a 2D platformer, very much like the original Rayman on the PlayStation. So that's actually pretty cool, especially noticeable about the fact that, well, usually, relatively speaking, that the original Rayman came out on, you know, the PlayStation, as well as the forms of Atari Jaguar, as well as the forms of the Sega Saturn. So, yeah, that does look like a pretty cool reward if you ask me. Especially noticeable, that's the reason why I've got that version. So, and finally, the most important thing for me though, and that's the forms of the Ape Escape 2. And I've pretty much gathered every single Ape Escape games up to this point. Well, technically, not so much the spin-offs though, just because the spin-offs are pretty crap, honestly. Especially noticeable, it's almost like a, well, I would say a rip-off of the forms of, let's say, like Mario Party, for instance. So, anyway, enough about that. Before we get on to the forms of more details about Ape Escape 2 that I've managed able to get for my birthday. As you can see on this particular challenge right there is the fact that we need to shoot every single of those jiggy icons to able to actually, we need to able to aim for a certain amount of points. I believe if you aim for about 90 points, you get double prizes. Like, I'm presuming the first prize you can get is by keep on shooting, like, I would say 75, even though I wasn't paying attention to the actual text box here and there. But that's okay, because we've almost had the forms of 100 or 90 as it's shown here. And then basically, if you do manage to shoot for about 90 and somewhat, then basically then you get yourselves the forms of, well, the first and the second prizes all at once. Both are the Jiggy as well as the forms of the last Cheeto page on this world. Even though that, mind you, I'm pretty sure that I think we have only got about one more Cheeto page left until we basically done with the Cheeto pages grinding. So, anyways, let's grab that, and sure enough, we're able to get this as well. So, either way though, yeah, we are definitely at the last Cheeto page left, and that's what appears to be takes place, I would say, on the 5th world, which as far as I'm concerned, because we haven't got to that point yet. Although, I would have liked to able to actually do that, ever since the very beginning of, well, before we get into the forms of the 6th world, but chances are, though, I wasn't paying attention to it at all, but, oh well, no big deal, but, that's besides the point, so... Anyway, about with the Ape Escape 2 that I've now finally got for the PlayStation 2, and this means I've got the rest of the whole trilogy. So because of that though, I'm definitely excited to be able to actually play those Ape Escape games now. Especially noticeable because I've definitely heard some good things about it. Especially noticeable during the course of, well, despite the fact that originally back in 2019, they were expecting to be able to announce something when it comes to its 20th anniversary or something, the 20th anniversary of Ape Escape series, but it turns out it's just concept art and that's pretty much about it. So no new game or anything on the PlayStation 4 or anything else to be more specific, which it kind of feels a bit meh at points, because I was expecting they were able to bring something more, but unfortunately though, excuse me, that it doesn't seem the case. So, oh well, not the end of the world, but certainly feels a little bit more, I don't know, kind of there, or something like that. But anyway, but at least I'm very glad to able to actually got the second game, so that way we can able to actually play the rest of the whole Ape Escape series now. Both on my own time, as well as maybe doing a let's play of those games and doing at some point in the future. But we don't know when though, just because obviously that we are still playing this at the moment, and especially noticeable that Mighty is still about to be going back into Wario Land 3, although potentially speaking that he's pretty much almost nearly at the end of Wario Land 3. So after he's done with that, then I'm presuming that Mighty and Ray will able to actually go back into Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury at some point, which that might be seems the case because, well, I'm sure you probably already figured out on the About category into my channel, but either way. So as you can see on this next objective right there, we need to go through 3 different events. The first event is High Jump, and basically you have to recommend you're able to actually use the bouncy shoes for Kazooie, because obviously that he will be the only one who can able to use that ability, and able to actually jump over for the actual, like, the high jump bar. Although it doesn't matter if you can either use Kazooie alone or Banjo and Kazooie together, but ultimately speaking, I always attempt to choose both Banjo and Kazooie together, which that might be seems the case. So, in the next event, we do need to able to recommend Banjo alone, and I believe the third and the final event is requires you to able to let become Kazooie alone. And because of that though, remember that particular final ability that we've actually gone through? Well, turns out about the fact that we do need able to actually just use that final ability for Banjo, and basically we can able to compete against with, well, basically that particular big lad to able to actually just to compete against him on the forms of that particular, well, event that we're about to be hopefully trying to reach into, which at this point I have no idea where I'm going. But either way though, that it maybe seems the case, because either way though, that honestly, aside from the fact that there's some other things I would like to say, but oh yeah, relatively speaking and stuff like that, is the fact that I suppose that Joel has slightly mentioned about this earlier, but we're probably gonna say this again anyway. But recently, during the course of yesterday, that My Little Pony Friendship is Magic is now 11 years old since 2010, which still, I can't even believe time really does fly, doesn't it? Especially about the fact the matter is, though, is that I still really enjoy the show. Especially I'm still a brony, of course. And now with Generation 5 is now a thing now, so this means about the fact that we can able to get used to with it, so... Anyway, so Event 2 is the sack race, and because of that though, we need to beat against him on the sack race. So that's all you really have to do. But anyways, let's go ahead and just become sack pack right here, so that way we can able to do some little bit of a tiny hops here and there. And yeah, we'll try to able to go for this thorny course, so... And hopefully we should probably start the race, so... There's also a shortcut you can take, but unfortunately though, I seem to accidentally fell off. That's only because I think the camera sometimes screws me up a little bit. But thankfully, if you do screw this up though, then at least you can able to try this again, so... Oh god, it's easy to lose control of itself sometimes. But hopefully we're able to keep trying, so... Honestly, out of all the actual 3 events, I think this one might actually be the trickiest because of the forms of, you have to be so precise with the actual skibbity hops, and as a result, if you're not controlling that thing properly, then obviously you lose control of yourself and you have to start the race again, so... But thankfully you don't need to do the whole entire mission objective all over again, so it's just a matter of, like, the safe respawn points or something, so... But I digress, so as you can see, we've managed to win the race, and now he'll able to meet us on the final event, which is only be accessible in Cuckooland alone. And because of that though, we need to head back into the forms of, the central, area. So either way though, that still, I will say this again, that this might actually be the only world that does not feature that many of those warp paths, because all it gives is just at the very beginning of the world, as well as the forms of the actual center portion of the world. So, anyways, before we deal with the last event on that particular objective, we need to regenerate our health with, you know what I mean, with this news pack and everything, and I somehow do a full damage again, which actually wasted me 3 health, so that's okay, because we can essentially do that snooze pack again, so that way we can able to regenerate our health again, so everything goes all fine and dandy and everything, so, seriously? Okay, whatever, we'll just go ahead and just do, like, high jumps and everything to, oh, goodness gracious, okay. That was a close one, especially I refused to able to actually get hit, so... Anyways, let's go ahead and take control of Cuckooland alone now, and basically all it needs to do now is the fact that we need to make our way to meet up with the forms of... Oh, Jesus Louise, I keep on getting hit multiple times, even especially noticeable with the obscure camera angles every once in a while, but it knows what it is, so... Anyway, so let's go ahead and... Oh, jeez Louise, so many enemies just keep popping up like nothing else. But, anyway, we'll, trying to cope with that anyway, and then, trying to keep on searching for stuff, so... And yeah, I do apologize for my sniffing in the background, although, good news is the fact there's nothing to do with that thing, or anything. It's just that my, nose feels a little bit sniffy at points, so just want to classify that, so... Anyway, so in this last event, it does need to require some speed running shoes, as you can see, and because of that, though, we do need to beat him for, well, hopefully try to get the next Jiggy, so either way, though, let's begin. And basically, you have to run straight forward, and then I think if you somehow accidentally jump or something, then I would say you would disqualified or something. But I have no comments there, especially noticeable that I just simply able to run straight forward and then just trying to go through over the hills, and that's pretty much about it, so... And there we go, we got ourselves our next Jiggy that we can now get, so, and that leads us to 81. So I believe we've only got about 9 Jiggies left until we are basically done with the Jiggies, collecting for the sake of Banjo-Tooie. So... yeah, very surprised that we're actually getting pretty close towards the end anyway. So, anyway, so I believe that, although we still have not done yet, because obviously we still need to get some more, well, if I recall correctly, I think we've only got one more, you know, 5 additional music notes that we can get, which, even then, I will, if I do end up missing that, then I'll probably able to double check in on it anyway. Oh, come on. Anyway. So yeah, for I've played the forms of those games basically on my own time for those presents I've already mentioned. I actually really enjoyed them, especially with Metroid Dread, like I said earlier, especially notable with the forms of Ape Escape 2 on the PlayStation 2, and also managed able to finally play, you know, Rayman 2 The Great Escape on the PlayStation 1, so that way I can able to experience the another content that was only exclusive to the PlayStation 1, that most of any other versions don't have. So, it kind of sucks if you ask me, where they don't able to actually have anything exclusively rewards or something. Although, mind you, that so many, the graphics might look a bit pixelated at points, especially noticeable because it was on the PlayStation, so... But, oh well, no big deal. But, at least I don't mind about that at all, so... Anyway, so, as you can see, that we've actually got ourselves another Jiggy by able to go in for that little jelly castle, or the bouncy jelly castle, which, it does look pretty cool though, but it does require Banjo alone for, not only for that particular Jiggy that we've already gotten, but also, I believe, another section that it does also requires Banjo alone. Specifically, whatever we get into right now is the fact that I'm presuming that we need to get into the forms of the cheesy area, so... Because that's the only section we've only got left before we deal with the forms of the next few points or something, which... I know it has been a while since I actually did manage to get back into this game, because after all, after the forms of the previous video, that my fingers are painful, especially my arm. It gets a little bit aching every once in a while, for like trying to mashing the buttons really so many times and all that stuff, but either way though. So here we are now onto the forms of the actual inside the cheese wedge, and as you can see that we still got ourselves the air meter, which this means that the cheese is awfully smelly. So as a result though, it can be pretty toxic, so... Yeah, basically, we need to use the actual sack pack ability for Banjo alone, and that way we can able to actually hop on to the forms of those spiky platforms that, thankfully, if you manage to use the sack pack, basically, that the actual spikes don't harm you. So because of that though, thankfully we can able to actually just make our way through there, and just get out of the way for a little bit until we basically reach at the very top. And sure enough, we're able to get the final Black Jinjo family, and we get ourselves another Jiggy. So that leads us to 83. So, yeah, pretty cool and top notch. And I believe if we go all the way from that particular hole over there, and I believe that pretty much gonna leads us to the forms of, I will classify for saying, the final Jiggy throughout the whole entire world, which... Either way though, I have no idea why I just managed able to use the snooze pack, although mind you, because I need to increase my health for a bit first, so... But anyways, let's go ahead and get ourselves the, I would say the final Jiggy in the forms of Cuckooland, so... And there we go. But we're not exactly done with this yet though, completely, because obviously we still only need to find the last collectible in this world, and if I recall correctly, we seem to be missing something, so... But then again though, we'll point it out whenever we leave the area as quickly as possible, because obviously if you somehow... Actually, before we get into that though, I need to grab some more eggs, like I just did right there, for the actual Kazooie Clockwork eggs, so, because obviously we still need to use those for occasional points, especially noticeable that we can able to actually just... Well, you know what I mean. So, either way though, yeah. So we'll just have to be very careful not to get too many fall damage from here. So, actually, gotta think about it though. Yeah, I think we're only missing one thing, and that is the forms of these 5 notes. So, yeah, I'm gonna have to able to find that at some point. Which, if I don't find it at all for about few or so minutes or something, then I can able to actually search it on the forms of some kind of a map function, or the actual map thing, or whatever you want it to be more specific. But either way though, we'll oh, good grief, so many fall damages in this particular world. I mean, generally speaking, because obviously that... Oh god. Okay, come on. I keep on getting hit, don't I? But that's okay, because we managed to go back together and use the teleportating warp pad, and then, sure enough though, that, actually I'll just need able to look on the map to see what's anything else in here, so... Okay, so I do figure out where the final 5 music notes are. So it turns out there is actually another hole entrance during the course of, well, let's just say, if we go back onto the forms of, you know, with the forms of the central cavern that we can able to go back into. Well, basically, like I said earlier, there's actually another hole that I somehow ignored, and that is this particular hole entrance just over there. And if we go continue further, while the draw distance was actually visible, then as you can see, there we get ourselves the final 5 music notes. I think that might be the only world I somewhat accidentally skipped over for these music notes locations sometimes. Although, to be fair though, getting these collectibles is still pretty easy with those music notes because they're all in like 5 notes in one pack, but it wasn't until in Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts that it goes back into the forms of Banjo-Kazooie's notes locations. So, I'm not exactly sure about the forms of Grunty's Revenge on the Game Boy Advance though. But anyway, let's just fall off right here, and then basically that allows us to able to instantly go back to the very beginning of the world. So, anyway, so let's check out the forms of the views total at the moment, and sure enough, we've gotten everything. So, and surprisingly, it did took me about an hour and 25 minutes, which, sure, it might be a bit small in some instances, but apart from that, I actually did that alright. Like, usually way better than the forms of Grunty Industries, that's for sure, because of the forms of a lot of backtracking, as well as the, probably the hardest maze in the game, in my opinion, just because of the forms of, some specific, you know, clinkers, locations that it needs to be specific, so, but that's just me. So anyways, I think suffice to say that we're basically almost done, as I said this earlier, so as a result though, before we end off the video here, I suppose we can probably take care of the forms of, well, after all, we've actually got ourselves every single extra honeycomb pieces now. Although, I think we should probably save that up until for later. So, first of all, let me just head over back onto Wooded Hollow. And I think this might actually be the final time we can able to actually just to hit into the forms of Jiggy Wiggy's temple. And what do I mean by that? Well, after all, we actually got about 84 Jiggies so far. And this way, we can now able to actually do the final Jiggy Wiggy challenge, and basically it's challenge 10. So hopefully we should probably able to actually fill up the last jigsaw pieces in there for the final time, and suffice to say, because obviously that wow, we're pretty much almost done here, so. But it's just the fact that sometimes that the challenge can be a bit easy and stuff like that, unlike the original game for certain bonus challenges, but still, it knows what it is, so... Anyway, so let's go ahead and place some edges there, and, hopefully, we should probably, well, trying to able to beat this a bit faster there. Sorry, I'm gonna have to concentrate on this particular, Jiggy Wiggy's challenge at the moment, because as you can tell, that's need able to actually just focus. So focus is key. So, and there we go. We've basically accomplished every single Jiggy Wiggy challenges of the game. So because of that though, and this will actually opens up the final portion of the game. Although I think it's going to take place in the exact same location as in the final world of the game, which appears to be, well, Culturing Keep. So, behold the power of the mighty Jiggy Wiggy for the final time. So yeah, it does manage to take place in Culturing Keep, and this is going to be pretty much located during the course of that area, right next to where the teleport pad was. And there we go, we basically done everything for, well, Jiggy requirements, although not 100% yet, because obviously there's still more things to come. Excellent, you have proved yourself the most worthy by opening all the doors. A special super challenge now awaits. that one has no reward. Okay, so it is optional if you really want to do the extra challenge, but honestly though, I think I should probably skip that, so whoever needs that anyway, because obviously he did say no reward or anything, so oh well, no big deal, but at least we can able to move on, so I think we should probably head into Cliff Top right now, because obviously, now we're actually completely done with the 8th world. So, I think, suffice to say for this point, and that is the fact that, well, potentially speaking, we should probably end things off at this point right here. So join me next time on Let's Play Banjo-Tooie. That is the fact that we'll try to able to collect the final 6 of those Jiggies before we're able to actually 100% everything throughout the whole game before we get on to the final thing of the game. So I'll see you guys until on Wednesday. So yeah, later fellas.